Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our episode 49 of the Drew Pavlis Show. Sorry, we're a little bit late, but we've got Paul Scallis joining us today, Lindy Man, very famous figure on Twitter. It's exciting to interview this member of the Greek diaspora. Zerenthius is here, Mikhail. Hello, guys. How are you guys going? I'll just quickly post the link one more time. Thank you so much for joining the live stream today, everybody. Lindy Man will be joining us very shortly. I'll post the YouTube link in the comments. Very exciting, very exciting. Please leave a like as well, guys, if you're watching on the YouTube. Just two Greeks, basically, as we all know. 1 second. I've sent Paul the link. Hopefully that will be good to go. Is the audio working well? How's everything going, guys? Please let me know if everything is good. We've got a smaller audience at the moment, only 5 on YouTube. Please leave a like, guys, if you're watching. Help us share it around. Hello, how you going, Don Co? Beautiful, beautiful. Yep, joined us. 1 second. I'll quickly. Paul, how are you going? Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, Drew. How you doing?
Good, good.
Look at that backdrop. You have icons. You have books. It's
Oh,
impressive.
yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. How's Chicago today, Paul?
Oh, it's good. It's the summer now, so it's like the weather's better and people are outside. It's mostly like most American cities. It's an indoor city. People stay indoors a lot, but when the summer comes for like 2 to 3 months, it becomes more of an outdoor city, and people spend most of their day outside, like in Europe. So it changes.
Yes, yes, excellent. And I wanted to say as well, it's great that we've got two members of the Greek diaspora here. It's a sort of Greek expat meeting. Tell me, how does your Greek background inform your work, Lindy Man?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I can read it, so I guess I can read some text that maybe other people can't, or in translation. Um, and
Do you
also,
think
I I don't think the Mediterranean mind has changed in thousands of years. I think when you read it, it's still the same thing. Then if you talk to Greek people or Southern Italians, there's a certain mindset that permeates through history. And so when you read these, like, read stuff from back thousands of years ago, it's kind of the same. It's the same approach to things. It's just a little bit, the language is a little bit more modern.
Interesting. How do you think the Mediterranean mind differs from, say, like the WASP mind or the sort of like weird psychology of Anglos?
um I think Northern Europeans scale well. I don't think they have a problem being employees. I don't think they have a
Yes.
problem with starting corporations and trying to set up franchises, and just being an employee is something that's fine. And I think if you're Greek, the goal is, I mean, you kind of respect like a country doctor more than like an employee at Goldman Sachs, right? Every man has to be a king. You have sovereignty, you have freedom, you have self ownership. It's one of the reasons why there's just so many cafes or independent businesses in, like, Istanbul or Athens or southern Italy, you know, where they don't make a lot of money. In fact, you probably make more money doing other stuff, but at least you sort of don't have a boss. And it's
That's
very
true.
important not to have a boss. So there's a real sense of entrepreneurship, diaspora, kind of like
Yes.
moving places moving to different cities isn't a big deal. Moving into the metropolis, a cosmopolitan city, and setting up business is fine. You kind of the culture is very mobile that way. So
That's so true about like the need for self-ownership and sovereignty. Like my parents did a fruit shop when I was growing up. Did your parents do small business when you were growing up in America?
yeah. Well, because I mean, an
Yeah.
employee is basically a slave, and I guess that
Yes, I
definition
agree.
changes everywhere, and it's a harsh term, and I don't mean it to be maybe in an American style term where you're like whipping someone or they're there forever. More like a Roman slave, which you can buy your freedom at some point, and some people get into debt, they go into slavery, then they pay it off and they leave or something. But there's just a general sense of um, someone controls your conduct. If somebody controls, as an employee, you have to suppress your natural volatility every day.
Yes.
You have a boss, you don't have customers, so you can tell a customer to fuck off, but you can't tell your boss to fuck off, or else you'll be on the street, right? So there's a lot of hiding yourself and suppressing yourself to fit into a certain situation. And there's a lot of lack of optionality. Like you don't, if there's like a hot market somewhere, maybe you should go to that. Or as an employee, you're just doing your one little thing every day, and like one day the business could just end and you wouldn't know it. And so so it's always good to have a lot of optionality as someone who's just kind of you want to be more of a hunter, I guess. But it's fine. I mean, I was an employee for many years. It's especially now in the modern age. It's not a terrible thing.
So you've now made it to the payoff space. You no longer like an employee.
No, I dabble in both. So
Yeah,
I dabble in both. I don't. I keep myself in both worlds.
that's interesting. I actually fully understand this idea because like, I'm 26 and I'm starting to see people my generation, like same people that were like graduating university from me and everything, like they're getting like good corporate jobs and stuff like that. Like they're working for like, the prestigious firms. You see them like they're at Ernst and Young. They're at they're at like at consulting firms and all stuff like that. And it kind of freaks me out a little bit, right? Because I'm trying really hard to like sort of make it in a payoff space. I mean, I'm studying at law school. I'm still working for a lawyer. I'm like still trying to like basically keep that option open for myself in case like all my streaming and my YouTube and all this stuff doesn't work out. But it's interesting because like a part of me kind of gets freaked out when I see all these other people my age, like they're starting to get like these established careers and stuff like that. But I'm not sure. Maybe it's just my personality. Maybe it's the Greekness in me. But like, I just never wanted to have a boss. Like, I struggle with the concept, right? Like, I really want to like own myself and just have self-ownership.
Yeah, and it's weird because there's like also an immigration that a lot of groups go through, which is the first generation starts a business, the second generation enters a high status, sort of white collar position, and then if that person's successful, that third generation becomes some artist or does something a little bit different. So
yeah, that's actually
where you are in that generational, and usually it's the second generation that's the unhappiest because they're the ones that sort of had to, have to change so much. So there is a generational thing there that happens that, and then eventually you just sort of assimilate, right? And then you're no longer, depends on who you pair up with, or you generally just become one of the people of the land.
Yes. Tell me about that. Like, what do you think it takes to become a person of one of the people of the land?
I mean, it just happens. I mean, it happens to every group, basically. I think there's some groups that resist it a little bit, but you generally just become, like what I guess in America we call white people, ethnic, former ethnics from Europe who don't really consider themselves connected to, the country that their ancestors came from, right? So you just sort of
true.
I mean that's
You just sort of like assimilate sort of into
Yeah.
the mainstream
Right.
white identity.
I think there's like a
Yeah.
few ways of assimilation. One is sort of, being a productive member of society, but then there's the other, which is completely cut off from any type of roots or any type of, language. Religion is a way to, keep a connection, I guess. But and that actually, religion and food is what really kind of last. It seems like more than other things.
Yeah. Are you Greek Orthodox Christian? As a Greek person?
Yeah.
Oh, cool, cool. I mean, I got my icons here. It's
Right.
it's a beautiful part of the culture. I mean, has that influenced you at all in any of your work?
Um, I mean, in my work,
Or
I
just
don't know.
just in
Like
like
it's like
your
there's
like
like,
kind of
I mean, it's
your
cool.
outlook?
It's like there's like a whole, there's like a diet that if you follow, it's going to lower your
Yeah,
cholesterol and keep you away from a lot of, you know, health problems because it's cycling protein, which I think a lot of Greek people have issues with like heart disease once they go into Western societies because they start eating lots of meat.
yeah, true.
And I think that so there's like a diet that's just kind of made for you that's been time tested, which is great. And then the aesthetics are great.
Yeah.
Um, the
How do you
rituals are
think it differs?
great. Easter is, is probably the best sort of one day ritual of the church, and that whole thing is probably better than, I don't know, than any other religion I've seen.
How do you think it
Um,
differs from like
there's a
Catholicism?
community too, I guess, which is fine, but I'm not, deep
Yeah,
into
yeah.
the
Do you think there's like a difference in outlook between like sort of Greek Orthodox and Catholic? Because I think, for example, like Catholic is much more dogmatic. I think the Orthodox Church is more accepting of like sin and the frailty of the human spirit. I don't know. This is my sort of understanding of it.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
knew
definitely.
trad Cas.
The Catholics are more emphasize sin, and think I think Orthodox more about Easter, more about resurrection. It
Yeah,
just seems like a more, Catholicism is built for scale, so it's trying to like, it's like changing too to accommodate bringing more converts in. It's
true.
kind of like the McDonald's of like Christian, and that's not a bad thing, but it is kind of meant for the world. And like Greek Orthodoxy is, it's like an ethno religion,
It is
basically.
kind of, yeah.
But the, so it's harder for an outsider to accept, but it also maintains and changes a lot less. And like, I don't know, what do you want from religion? What do I want from religion is something that just doesn't change, that just like keeps doing the thing that's been doing for a long time, because I don't need it to change. Like the modern world changes enough.
Yeah,
What you need is
yeah,
just like
for
a
sure.
foundation of something that's just like how it's always been. The sacred language, which exists on its own. You don't want to like bring that down to the common language like what the Catholics did, which I think it demysticizes
That's
the
interesting.
church and the religion, and I think it causes people to just leave it. I think there's a real form of sacred, like Muslims have this. They're good with this actually, where it's just they kept the Arabic, the classical Arabic, and a lot of people don't even know what it's saying. It doesn't matter though. Like, um,
Well, people
it's just
memorize it without even
it's
knowing
sacred
the
that
understanding.
you gotta keep. And I think once you get rid of the sacred, like the Catholics got rid of Latin,
Yeah.
I don't think it brings people in. It just kind of brings the religion down, and it makes people almost think it's like less special that way. I think these old languages really matter, and I think there's separation between the sacred and the profane. It needs to always be kind of kept.
That's interesting. I wonder what you think about like sort of like American forms of Christianity, like the sort of televangelists and stuff like that of the South. To me, sometimes I look at it, I'm like, it does. I'm not even sure if it's Christianity. Like the huge mega churches and all this sort of stuff. It looks very strange to me, right? It looks so different to sort of like the older forms of Christianity, like Catholicism and Orthodoxy.
I mean, I think every group kind of I think religion is a very bottom-up thing, not a top-down thing. I don't think anybody
Yeah.
imposes religion on like a group. I think the group characteristics come first, and then that shapes the religion that they kind of that emerges from, and like this, and you work within the structure, which is you work within the structure of Christianity in the West, right? Which is why like
Yeah.
Turkish Islam might be different than Saudi Arabian Wahhabism or something, right? Because they're just different cultures.
Yeah.
So American society is different than other cultures, right? And so the religion that emerges under the umbrella of Christianity is also going to be a little bit different. I don't think, the churches kind of look like basketball stadiums. Well, like that's what a lot of contemporary American art kind of looks like, right? Like the pastor's kind of,
Yeah.
he's in a suit, he's maybe talking about money, or like, well, money's really important in America too. So it's just, I mean, it's just working within the structure. I almost think it's adaptive. You're probably better off worshiping some American religion, and in a way, in a way, it's probably fit for the environment. Um, you know what I mean? So I don't really
Yeah.
hate it. I'm not trying to hate it. I don't think like it's not super old. I mean, America's not super old, but I generally think a lot. I generally can understand some of it. And it probably works within the context of the society. So I don't hate it.
Yeah, when you talk about like that part of American culture, like like the big stadiums, money, that sort of thing, like these are very different sort of values and like perspectives on life to Europe. What do you think like the main differences are when you're traveling in Europe versus like when you're traveling in America? What do you think are like the main cultural divides? Do you think there's a full break in Western civilization between like America and the old world, or do you think we're still part of the same
No,
civilization?
actually, it's like really more similar. It's getting more similar, right? Like
Yeah,
people under 30 speak English so well right now.
yeah, that's true.
Um, and then you see country specific stereotypes within individuals in Europe over 50, like a Portuguese guy, a Spanish guy, a French guy, an Italian guy over the age of 50 really are different. But then when they're like
Yeah,
23, 24 years old, it seems there is like one
international culture.
pan-European identity
Yeah,
emerging. And, that's obvious. I mean, that's predictable from social media to just general what I call refinement culture, which is the
yeah.
making the sameness of everything. So I think the differences between countries are getting a little less. But what strikes me
That's
about Europe,
interesting.
you
Like,
don't need money for civilization. In America,
yeah,
money's very, very important. Like, and there's a certain number that you need, and if you go below that number, you're living in like a neighborhood that's like particularly violent, or there's
like
drug
third
addicts.
world.
It's like really depressing. And it's not like the built environment might be from like very car centric. So I think you really need a certain amount of money in America to survive, to get to a level where things are pleasant. Whereas I think in European society they can manage to live off €2,000 a month or something. I don't
Yeah,
know these numbers, which are really low to me.
that's
Um,
true. It is really low over there.
and so, but the crime rate's low. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody's just kind of chill. I mean, I don't think, I'm not trying to say it's some like heaven. I just think that you can get, money isn't the be all and the end all in different societies. But I think in America, it really matters a lot.
that's very true. I'm interested in that idea that you have where it's like refinement culture applied to like actually like the level of nation states and everything. And yeah, it does seem that like there's increasing global sameness. What do you think is behind that? Is it just like literally capitalism? Like just like companies having to market to the entire world? It's interesting.
I think the more connected you are, the less diversity there is. So,
Yeah.
if you're like the hats, right? Here's an example, right? If you go back 100 years, every fucking region of every country, not just every country, every region in a country had a specific hat. And now you go around the world and there's like one hat, which is the baseball hat, the American baseball, which is like, so now you got one hat that everybody wears. And like maybe in the UK, you'll see like, what is that? That one little hat. You'll see that sometimes.
Oh, like you're talking like a top hat
pub
sort of
hat.
thing.
I don't know what the fuck you call it. The Irish hat.
Right. Yeah.
So, or you'll see the Greek fisherman hat sometimes on really old men in Greece, but that's like in the cowboy hat in the South. But generally, the baseball hat has replaced all hats. In a way, that's an example of refinement culture.
That's interesting. Do you think it's like a sad thing if like basically like the differences in, national cultures just kind of get like all erased? Or like, I don't know, there are some people who sort of talk about like, if you actually want to have diversity, you kind of have to preserve the different national characteristics of different societies. Otherwise, like everywhere is just going to literally look the exact same.
Yeah, I mean, that's happening. I mean, new architecture in most of Europe and America kind of looks the same. I mean, it's this boxing kind of thing. Is it good or bad? Probably not great. You want people to make, but I think people are doing this in a way willingly in many ways.
That's true about the architecture, because like I remember like if I go to Europe or I go to America, the way, like, I don't know, just like the houses, like the shopping centers, the malls, they all do basically look the same, right? Like unless you're in like a historic downtown type thing where there is distinctive architecture, but if you're just like talking about just like the general features of like modern life, like just even the road
right,
signs,
where real people live and shop and stuff is the same, probably everywhere.
Yeah. It's strange. I don't know. Like, what are your sort of thoughts on like mass migration and multiculturalism and stuff like that? Like, I mean, these are like obviously like big questions, but how do you think that
I
links
think
to refinement
borders
culture?
are Lindy, and I think everybody kind of, even in like a heavy immigrant friendly country like America, there's still an innate sense of needing like insiders and outsiders and borders, and so I think there's I don't know what that level is of like what that appropriate level of immigration is for society. And I like to think of like America or even probably Australia as like a thin culture, not a thick culture.
I
Thin
think you're
meaning
right compared to like
not
Europe.
bonded by blood or religion
It's not ethno states
or
really.
even like shared history, because a lot of people have come in different time periods. Like James Cook and you are like different.
Yeah, of course.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
so
It's very similar to America in that way, because
right.
like
It's not
that
necessarily
original
a
sort of,
bad
like,
thing.
clean
People leave
identity.
you alone a little bit. There's some space. Like, let's go. If you go to a country that's a little thicker, like Greece or something, that's like bonded by like more genetics, religion, shared history. Like it's kind of more. It feels more like a family, but it also kind of feels suffocating a little bit if you're someone who just wants to feel anonymous or have some space. So there's like
True. That's
there's
the downside.
there's good and like I feel comfortable in thin culture societies at this point.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable in like not in a city than I do in like when everybody around me is kind of the same. So, but other people are the opposite. They want to be in a situation where they know everyone and everybody knows each other's business. There's like warmth there. I get it. So
Yeah.
so these countries kind of easier to like accept immigration, and people kind of just assimilate because they're not really assimilating to something really, really deep. It's thinner. It's like so, but even there's a limit though to what I don't know how many people you want to accept or not, or how many people new people you want. America's always done a thing where it's like accepted a huge amount of immigrants and then kind of shut the door for like decades and then reopen the door.
Yeah.
So it's sort of always it's always in this process of like opening and closing. But as you mentioned, like if the world is becoming more of the same, then if everybody around the world is kind of acting the same, then maybe assimilation isn't that difficult these days.
That's actually a really good point about like thin culture versus thick culture, because like America and Australia are certainly not sort of like traditional like ethno states by any means, and I kind of find it like very strange when you see. I mean, like this is actually an interesting question. What do you think of those types of? I see these guys in America, they're on the far right and stuff, and they're trying to construct that type of identity. I think with America, like where they talk about like heritage Americans and stuff like that, but it doesn't seem to be like something that's very natural. I think to
When I mentioned this, an Australian guy told me, I said that if I moved to Australia tomorrow, I would pick up friends and integrate.
I think so. For sure.
He's like, no, you wouldn't, mate. You wouldn't be
No,
able to penetrate our society.
No, I don't think it's like that.
And he was, and then I looked at his profile, and it was like a right-wing identitarian of Australia guy.
Yeah.
And I didn't know those existed, but
they're trying to start it up. It's funny. They are trying to start that up. It's funny because like I'm not even kidding, man. Like, I'm not biased or anything, but if you came to Australia, like you would basically be like assimilated in basically like a minute. I don't think it's that complex, right? Like as long as you speak English and like you sort of like hold to the general sort of outlook, I guess, of like the modern world, I think it's pretty easy to assimilate. But
right.
But yeah.
So yeah, that's my thin culture, thick culture. I think Europe has different issues. Because I think some countries are
like
thicker
1,000 years
than others, but
I think it's different in Europe because like a lot of these countries have been coherent sort of nation states for like 1,000 years, And this is an interesting question, right? I guess it is changing a little bit. You've got the famous example of Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think his name is, in Greece, and like like he's a black Greek guy, speaks fluent Greek. I think he plays in the NBA now, and like there's certainly heaps of people who like hold him up as like a sort of like hero with the Greeks when he wins and everything. Then I have seen some sort of like Greeks online saying like, no, he will never be Greek and sort of stuff like that. Do you think the mindset is changing a little bit in parts of Europe, like where it is a bit more open to people like migrating and assimilating, despite not being sort of part of the same shared ethnos and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I probably, there's some cultures like France, which is like universalist.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So they'll accept anybody who like speaks French and acts in a certain French way. I spent some time over there. I mean, but then there's other places like Greece or like the Balkans, or it might be a little bit more complicated because they base their kind of country on maybe a little bit of genetics, ethnicity, religion. I don't know.
We've got a comment here by this Greek guy. He's a Greek guy in Brisbane, which is my city. And he goes, Giannis is definitely not Greek. He's Nigerian. To be Greek, your blood has to be Greek.
Right.
I mean, there are Greeks who see it that way. I mean, he speaks fluent Greek. Like when he wins, he flies the Greek flag. A lot of Greeks, see him as like
right. But we're having a discussion here, though, right? Like we're having a discussion. The fact that we're even having this discussion means that there's reasonable opposing views, which is if an American, they're not doing this to LeBron James or something. Nobody's saying LeBron James isn't American because he doesn't have American blood.
I mean, this is the funny thing. I see some of the sort of like heritage American types say that these days, but they're mainly really confined to Twitter, like a very small minority, I think.
I'm not. I don't know. I think it's fine if some European countries want to hold on to, if Greeks. There's a Greek kind of face when you go there. You see it a lot. I don't know. If you want to stay like if Finland or Greece or Estonia want to stay a certain way, I don't know why they have to change. I mean,
I agree with you there. I don't think I don't think any country should be forced to like fully change itself, especially if it's got like thousands of years of history and stuff like that. Like I guess with Giannis, like I mean, ethnically he is Nigerian, I think he is, but like culturally he's like fully Greek and stuff like that. It's an interesting question. I don't know. This is an interesting question. So are you mainland Greek or like sort of like Greek Islander? Because I'm like Greek Cypriot.
I guess my mom is from the mainland. My dad is from an Ionian island.
Oh, okay, nice. Do you think there's a difference between the sort of like Greek Islanders and the mainland Greeks? I mean, I get the Twitter trolls calling me Turkish and stuff because I'm from Cyprus, which is funny.
I think the mainland Greeks have more Slavic DNA, and I think they didn't really go into the islands as much. So I think the islands have a little bit more. I don't know what you'd call it. Like
I've read that it's closer to like southern Greek. Italy.
Traditional, whatever, like older, like Crete is an example.
Yeah.
You see people from Crete, and they look a little bit more distinct than people maybe from other places of Greece and mainland. So.
I've read that like when it comes to like Crete, Cyprus, some of the islanders, like sometimes it's like actually like earlier indigenous populations that were already living on the islands, and then they sort of like Hellenized over time. So I guess that would be different than I guess that would be sort of different than like mainland Greeks. It's interesting though. Do you think there's any like sort of cultural difference between the islanders and the mainlanders? And I don't know. Have you had any?
I don't think I've noticed any difference.
Have you had any have you ever gone to Cyprus or have had any interaction with Cypriots by any chance?
No, I've never been to Cyprus. Is it worth going?
I mean, I've only gone once when I was like 12 years old, and it's a bit hard for me as well because I don't speak Greek. I mean, this is an interesting question. Like when you go to Greece, do you feel like an outsider or do you feel like a foreigner? Or do you feel like you're Greek? Because like I feel like if I went to Cyprus today, like obviously it'd be like nice to like see like extended family and all this stuff. But I kind of feel like because I don't speak Greek and because I'm not like, I feel like I wouldn't really fully fit in.
Yeah. I mean, I still feel like an outsider, but I don't. But I don't feel like a complete outsider because I speak it. So.
Do you think the language?
If I didn't speak it, I'd feel much more like an outsider. I think language is like, and I think that's a fair barrier to like because the language is kind of special. I think the Greek language is.
I think that's true.
I think it's you can't read English from 500 years ago, but you can read Greek from 1,000 years ago, right? 1,500 years ago. So like there is it's much older and it's intelligible. So you have like a certain mindset that comes from this language that you access that other people can't access because most of their languages don't go far back as that. Or if they do, they're just unintelligible. So I think it's preserving the language and sort of that's the bar to enter our society for this country is probably a good thing.
I think that's true. There's an interesting comment we had someone say, I did Greek school for 12 years and I'm quite in touch with Greek culture, but the natives can pick me as a diaspora Greek almost instantly.
Well, that comes also from how your face sits too. So when you grow up speaking English, your face actually sits differently than it's someone who grew up speaking Greek in Greece.
I have noticed this,
language changes the muscles in your face, and then there's cultural expressions that you mimic too, because you're in another society. So you'll see this with Rishi Sunak. If you watch videos, of Rishi Sunak,
great example.
It almost looks like there's an white Englishman inside of an Indian man.
That's true. Like, culturally, he's like fully English, right? And I had this sort of joke where, have you seen that funny? He's like a white ginger guy in Britain who converted to Islam, and he did this song where it's like Dino Vidania, like he's like rapping and he's like rapping like doing dawa and stuff like that, and he's like wearing like a Palestine jacket and like he like seems like almost assimilated into like the local sort of like Muslim street culture. And I had this interesting question that I sort of put to the ethno-nationalists, and I was like, who's more English? Like this guy who's like an English. Like he's Anglo by ethnicity, but culturally he's kind of like almost Muslim, like, right? And then versus like Rishi Sunak, who's like, we all know ethnically he's Indian, but culturally he seems like fully English. And you can even tell this by like, even the most subtle ways, like, like mannerisms, and even just like the way face sits. Like, for example, I have Korean friends, and I swear I can tell the difference between like a Korean international student at the university and like a Korean who's like grown up in Australia and is like fully westernized. I swear I can tell the difference.
Yeah. You can see it with their face, their gestures in their face, and also body language too. It's, we're still kind of like animals, and we're mimicking everything, and languages we speak emphasize certain muscles in our face. So it's kind of fun. You can spot Europeans in America, even though they're white and they look like they fit in, but you can spot them. You can spot, I get spotted as American in Greece sometimes by the way there's also a way you walk too. Like a lot of Americans,
that's true with Americans.
Walk with their shoulders. And a lot of
Europeans, I can tell someone American based on how they walk.
With their kind of like your stomach a little bit more. There's like a difference.
I think I can tell people if someone's American based on how they walk. Like it's something as simple as that. Like it's a real thing. Like, and it's not even necessarily something to do with ethnicity. Like, I think you see it as well with like sort of like basketball players, like Black American basketball players. Like if there's like a team going through an airport, you're like, yeah, they're American. You can just tell straight away. It's like the way that they're walking almost, and like, walking with the shoulders back, like the mannerisms and stuff. It's very interesting. I think Americans generally do have like just a different way of walking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I want to ask you as well. This is a good one to go into, AI. Like we're now seeing some reports that like sort of like younger generations like are almost like illiterate, like they can't write, like very few people read and stuff like that. I'm like I'm kind of like worried that this is going to lead to like genuine sort of like dumbing down of the population, stuff like that. Do you think there's a risk here? Like, how do you see this sort of thing playing out? Because I know you wrote something recently about ADHD.
It's going to take entry-level jobs. I worry about that. Like, and so like people be hard for people to get like their first job. And your first job is like the most important because that's how you build like the narrative of your career, and that's how you sell it. So I don't think it'll like be doing all the jobs or something, but I think it'll be doing like the first job that it's like the most simplest. So I think that could be a problem in the future.
Do you worry about stuff like the reports that show that like young people like just like not reading at all, like they're getting all their kind of like education almost from like TikTok and stuff like that? And I mean, I've read things recently that have been talking about like people going through college and like they're graduating almost like functionally illiterate and like almost like unable to write without ChatGPT and stuff like that. Like this stuff like worries me a lot about like the Zoomers.
Yeah, I think reading his books is going to go bye-bye for like a generation or two.
It looks like that a bit.
Which isn't like good, but I really don't see, I don't know. I mean, it takes effort to read, even for me. I still do it. Yeah. I like it, but it takes more effort now than it did. And I grew up pre-smartphone, right? So I have those muscles of like, let's take the book, let's read a book. This is great, right? Whereas if people don't kind of develop those muscles of reading, or just and really like you're working all day, you only have you got to exercise, you got to eat dinner, you got to socialize. Like reading is hard to get into like a regular working person's life, and there's a lot of bad books too. So it's like if you read the wrong things, you want to give up on reading altogether. You don't blame it on, if you listen to bad music, you blame it on the artist. But if you kind of read something that you don't like, you kind of blame all books a little bit. So you kind of give up easily. So reading is tricky because reading's the best as far as changing your life, changing how you see the world. Videos don't do that. Audio doesn't really do that. Podcast is okay, but it's such like filler. There's so much filler.
It's so slow compared.
Slow, and it's like entertainment. So, but the book is like, and text in general, you can change people's world quickly and effectively. And so if book reading goes away, it's kind of be a sad, but I mean, I think that it's going away. So,
I mean, I think it is. And I don't know, like I saw your thing recently where you were talking about like, why is there so much ADHD in American society? And like, but it's the same everywhere. I mean, I got diagnosed with ADHD, but like, truth be told, I probably could have gone through life not getting diagnosed with ADHD. I think like almost anybody could get diagnosed with ADHD now. And like, it does help me. Like, I mean, I guess what would distinguish me from somebody else is that like I take a Ritalin tablet and like I get like a 20% boost to to productiveness. Whereas like I remember there'd be kids at university that take a Ritalin tablet and they'd go like fucking raving and stuff like that. Like for me, it's like a 20% boost to like, my concentration span. So I guess like I probably actually do have it. But it does seem like, there's this proliferation of ADHD diagnosis and it's just so hard to keep a concentration span now. Dude, even me, right? Like I love my books. You can see behind me, I've got all my books out. Fucking love it. Like it's always been something I've loved since I was a kid. But even for me, it's getting harder to read. And like it's just so difficult with the concentration spans these days. Like, what do you think is behind this? And I mean, is this like just like the phenomenon that's killing reading?
You brought up ADHD. I wrote that yes, it's overprescribed, especially in America, but the people who go to America or maybe even Australia probably already had ADHD and then reproduced and carried it over to their children because it's very highly heritable. It's as heritable as height. So and people with ADHD like move around a lot. They get a lot more jobs. They move more places. So there's probably more ADHD genes in immigrant societies like Australia and America than there are in like places where they originally came from. So I think that's one aspect of it, which is you're selected to have ADHD.
I look at my Bapur, right? It's funny.
And then, the people who leave, right? The people who have ADHD came to Australia or America and then started these businesses, which are actually like, they're like, the symptoms don't affect them as much, like because they're always they're always aware, where and then the second generation, right, goes into white collar work, and then you have to sit down and do something, concentrate on something. So now you're kind of brought into this environment where your ADHD is actually like not a positive, whereas the generation before it was probably a positive in the way they were working and owning a shop, and it's just very easy to be like constantly stimulated with customers or inventory or every day is kind of going on a hunt. Whereas white collar workers kind of playing the long consistency game that drags you down, and some people are very good at it, by the way, and like you can kind of tell. But the ADHD brain people, I think it eats them up. And so they turn to drugs, and then the drugs help them concentrate, but you're changing the human to adapt to the environment. You're not changing the environment to adapt to the human. And, that's where a lot of people are in. We're in that with the fat drug that came out. We're in with, Adderall with ADHD. And look, you got to do what you got to do. It's just that certain people are going to change their environment to suit them, and certain people are going to change themselves for their environment. So.
That's so true. I was going to say, like, I think I see like all the symptoms in like my Bapur and my dad, right? Like they were just fruit shop guys their whole lives. And like, they were not in the era where like, anybody got ADHD diagnoses. But like now that I see it, like my Bapur's like 87, I think this year. And he can't sit down. Like he still has to go out to the fruit shop and work, just like have something to do. So I think maybe you're right. It's like genetic. It's like sort of predisposed a bit. I don't know, like what's your attitude towards like sort of like drugs like Ritalin and Adderall and like, like Mounjaro, Ozempic and stuff like that? Like, I mean,
I've done them. They're great. But they're I don't do them anymore because I get stimulated by what I write and like the ideas. And I've built a life where I don't really need them. But when I was a lawyer and I was doing stuff that was too boring, they were really helpful. So, but they also kind of made me a little bit more angrier. They also made me more robotic, and I was a version of myself, but I wasn't really myself. But you have to make a living, or and other people are going to be on it, so you're going to have to compete with them, and so it's just one of those things.
What was your experience with law like? Do you regret going to law school? And did you enjoy any of your time as a lawyer? Like
Uh,
were you always hoping to get to a part where you're like payoff space, able to do your own thing, sort of thing?
it was all right. I never wanted more than like just I never wanted like to grind. So
Yeah,
I needed a certain amount of money, and if you kind of study a niche aspect of law, you can kind of get that a little bit. But I never wanted to work a lot, and then remote work came during COVID, so I just took that and I ran away. Um, so I was happy to be able to remote work and not be in an office anymore. Um,
yeah,
but I find it to be like a fine job. Like I didn't really have expectations of it that maybe other people didn't, because I've worked in retail, I've worked in construction, I've worked in like
yeah,
gyms, I've worked as like in offices, like I've worked in a lot of places. I've been like around bad jobs. So
yeah,
when lawyer to me is not a bad job, it's like a good job, but it's still a job. So I never put high expectations for it or made it my life. It was always something to do, and I never wanted like to really grind, like some lawyers really grind and make it their life, and I
yeah.
don't want that life.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of writers who like have had law as a sort of like a day job for them, like a sort of like just a thing to keep the ends meeting while they do their real job. It's interesting. I met this guy called Gerald Manine, and he's an Australian, and he was the favorite to win the Nobel Prize for Literature last year, and he's been a favorite for a couple of years to win the Nobel Prize for Literature, and he lives in this like small rural town in Victoria, and he's never been on a plane before in his life. He's a really interesting guy. Like I reckon very much sort of like Asperger's. Like he has a very unique and special actually outlook on the world. He's an amazing guy. You should check out his writing if you ever get the chance. But I remember talking to him, and he was saying to me like, "Oh, I never wanted to have writing as my main profession." So like he would go out and he'd literally dig ditches. He'd just do like laboring jobs, anything. For a while, he then taught creative writing at university and stuff like that. But for a long time, like he was just like writing was something he definitely wanted to keep just as a sort of like thing he did for a couple hours every night rather than his entire life. And it's interesting. He only really became really famous the past couple of years. Like New York Times did a profile of him a couple of years ago saying, is the next Nobel Prize for literature like tending the bar at a dusty Victorian town. And he's a really fascinating, unique character. But yeah, it was interesting. Like he was telling me like just his approach to being an artist and stuff. He wanted it to be something that was never his main profession. And I think you've written a bit about that before. Like I'm interested in your thoughts on this.
On what
Sorry. I mean, like you've got those like artists, for example, like Kafka. Some of these
Oh,
type of guys are like,
so
and like,
sometimes
yeah,
it's good for you, like, to have a job and
yeah,
then do your art on the side, because it imposes constraints.
yeah,
You gotta write about what's important or what you really feel,
yeah,
and you don't have time to do anything else. So if a lot of academic writing is people who have their entire day to write about whatever they want, and so it kind of sucks. It's kind of not.
oh, academic
It
writing
lacks,
sucks.
it lacks something. It lacks like a certain like relevance. It lacks a certain punch. It lacks a certain like contact with reality.
I think that's
So
right.
and so I mean, I've been successful in writing, and one of the reasons is because I've always been attached to reality, I've always been
Yeah,
working, and I've always had constraints, and I've always kind of thought like, well, what's relevant to people who are actually, living and working, and not going into sort of these abstract theoreticals, which I think a lot of, like, especially with political posters or with other types of people who kind of spend their day online and don't work, kind of go into, which is like, none of it's really relevant to anything. It's like fantasy land or fake
yeah,
files
that's true.
or something. So some of it is like you need some contact with reality. And I think that restraint, you have a lot of great artists who kind of writers who had jobs,
Yeah.
like Moby Dick. I forgot what his name is. Herman Melville.
Yeah,
Uh,
Melville.
yeah, Melville's great.
The
So
guy
you
who
have like
wrote
there's
Hard
a lot. There's
Nothing.
actually a pretty good list. There's like a long list, and so you do your research on the side with the constraint on time, with the constraint
Joseph
on
Conrad.
subjects, and I mean, it kind of sucks because you're giving up a lot of your other part of your life, um, but it works.
Yeah. Would your recommendation be what's your recommendation for young people who like want to get to that payoff space, who don't want to be in the 4HL, who like, the sort of like life of the grind where they want to like have self-ownership and stuff like that. Like someone who's like more creative, artistic sort of thing. What's your advice to these types of
I don't
people?
know, Matt. Like, I guess there's way more opportunity now, but there's also way more people trying to do it.
Exactly, yeah.
Just always have a plan B, and always have um, I think always have like barbell it. Always have a job and then try it out, because I
Yeah.
think when you don't have any like security, it kind of, for most people, I don't think they work well under that type of
The
stress.
starving artist cliche.
I
It
think
doesn't
and
work.
I think a lot of successful people have like wealthy parents or a middle class household, or they have some
Yeah.
support network where because that at that time work becomes play, and so when you're playing, you're much more creative. But when you're
Yeah.
like stressed and worry about bills, worry about like where I'm gonna live or how I'm gonna pay rent, like I think it closes your mind a little bit, and you're not playing anymore, and you activate some like fight or flight. And one of the reasons why kind of people from certain backgrounds, which they have support, do well, is because they can just treat work as play, and hard things aren't necessarily that hard if I know that I have something to fall back on. So
Yeah.
um, yeah.
That's interesting. How long did you feel it took you to get to like sort of payoff space, like when you could like, devote a lot more time to your sort of like creative work compared to like ordinary work?
I don't know. I mean, I just do it. Like I'm on Twitter, even while I was working. You're on Twitter every day, so it's just like,
Yeah.
I guess I've been writing now for 3-4 years every week. I don't know. It's just a habit you do. You kind of like, you go and like start, do your writing for every day, and eventually you might get traction or you might not. I don't know.
Yeah. Is your sort of schedule like to try do like one blog a week type thing?
Yeah, I try to do two, but it depends on what's going on, what the topics are.
And how do you like derive inspiration for like the different things that you do? Because like your topics are so varied. How do you like decide what you're going to write about or come up with what you're going to write about?
I think it just has to stimulate you, and then what stimulates you might stimulate the audience. So you have to be sensitive to, when you're browsing online, you have to kind of be sensitive toward what is stimulating to you, and not and it's tricky because there's some things that trigger you,
Yeah.
but they're kind of empty, or they're not deep, right? So like you want something that stimulates you, but in a way that's like makes you feel satisfied or something. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
like it's the difference between like a trigger versus like, oh, look, this is an interesting thought that I'm like constantly thinking about. Now maybe I should write about it. So you just constantly have to be kind of stimulated a little bit, or cognizant of what stimulates you versus.
I remember I remember you wrote something on Twitter where you basically said like Twitter is almost like the new form of writing a book or something like that. Could you go into that idea a bit, because it's
Yeah, I
interesting?
mean, if you follow the same poster for years, and I've been
Yeah.
posting for, I don't know, almost 10 years at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
that's basically a book. And
Yeah.
you're reading his stuff every day, and he's just so I mean, that can be probably like, maybe browsing Twitter, random Twitter people, it's probably not a book, but if you follow certain posters for a long enough time span, I mean, I don't see how that's any different than a book.
I was gonna say like it's interesting because with your Twitter account, it's like you've managed to create like a very coherent sort of like aesthetic and like a sort of like a cohesive sort of like body of work to your Twitter account. How do you like avoid like say like audience capture or like how have you managed to do that over like such a long period of time posting and stuff like that?
I don't know.
Because like people talk about like people will joke about like facts like they'll say stuff like, oh, that's like a Lindy Man type tweet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like people actually sort of like recognize like a sort of distinctive kind of like voice or aesthetic with your post, which is really interesting to me. I really respect that. Like I've tried to do a little bit of that myself.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know.
But
I
it's very
mean,
high tier.
I think there's a lot of temptations, especially the scale, to like, I'm going to be a politics guy, or I'm going to be like a sports guy, or I'm going to be like, because there's certain topics which everybody is talking about. So if you're just like that, you can kind of like get a lot of followers that way, or you can kind of, but I think, I just try to stay the same. I think it's actually easier to do on Twitter because, it's just you and your phone or your computer. Like, there's nobody in the room with you. So there's no audience staring at you. So you can kind of, it's not like visceral, where it's like you're like a crowd, you're like giving a speech or you're doing comedy at a club. So I think if you just kind of, just you can keep your own style easier because there's just nobody around you. It's all just in your phone, and like they're not coming out of the phone.
That's true. I mean, do you avoid like do you avoid reading comments on your posts and stuff like that for that type of reason?
No, I'll read some of them. I mean, I'm not. It depends. Sometimes I don't feel like reading them, but sometimes I do. So it all depends. But I think it's always good to keep a distance because, I mean, some people are cool. Other people, there's agendas. There's foreign actors on Twitter. Like,
true, of course.
I mean, there's weird stuff going on, but, so.
This is a good question actually. Like when we talk about like foreign actors, like you've got a classic type like Miles Chong guy, and like that guy, like he's kind of become infamous, I think, because like he's literally a Malaysian guy. I don't think he's even ever really been
lives
to
in Dubai,
America.
I think.
Yeah, lives in Dubai. I'm not even sure if he's been to America. And like literally like
he's
all his
like
posts.
the original guy that's done this, right? Foreigner, just posts about America, collects cash. And it's and a lot of people are doing it now, but I think he was one of the like, real first guys to kind of, and people don't care. And look, I mean, most people are, who's reading Twitter? When you look at Twitter usage, it starts at 9 a.m., peaks at around 2 p.m., and it starts going down at like 5:30. So it's just like people are using it at work. They're bored.
Yeah, they're just scrolling.
And so, I don't think there's a lot of thought in like what is the post saying is like the thing, and not so much that the regular person on Twitter isn't thinking about Miles Chong in Dubai.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
About like what's the text on this thing? Is this interesting?
They perfected
Let me think about this, or then I gotta go switch off to something else. So, but other Twitter posters are like kind of obsessed with. It's like you're in the market in the Agora, and like one guy selling tomatoes is saying, fuck that guy selling cucumbers. But the customers don't care. They're just like, I just want to buy cucumbers. I don't know what the hell you guys are beefing.
Yeah, true.
So
it's funny because I think they've kind of perfected a bit of a model because like types of like Miles Chong type poster, it'll be like they'll just like have like a video of like a black guy or whatever, like in America, like fighting someone, and they'll be like, "What do you notice?" and shit like that. And it's like I guess it's like very visceral content, like it's like stuff designed to like I guess like trigger like the id, like something very deep inside. Right. And I find it. I sometimes get called like an Miles Chong because like I'm Australian, I'm not American. I do comment on American politics, and like that's one of the most offensive things to me when someone says, "Oh, you're like an Miles Chong," because like, I don't want to be like one of those guys who's just like literally just like a visceral level like farmer. And like I don't know, like I guess my defense of myself would be that like, well, I do try to talk about other topics, like I'm very passionate about like Ukraine. I I talk about British politics. I talk about Australian politics too. I don't try to hide the fact that I'm not in America. I think that's probably one of the things that's most annoying about Miles Chong. Like he doesn't hide. It's almost like he tries to hide the fact that he's like Malaysian. He doesn't live in America. Whereas like I like joke all the time. Like, you know, I'm an Aussie guy living in Greece. Like, no, sorry, I'm a Greek guy living in Australia, sort of thing. But I don't know. It's interesting. Like, do you think Twitter has gone downhill a little bit over the past couple of years, like with the monetization, with that level of like engagement farming that has taken place and stuff like that? What are your thoughts? Like, what are your thoughts on like sort of like Elon taking over Twitter?
Yeah, probably got worse. I think
Yeah,
I think it's also easier for like more left wing or left of center content to be mainstream, and then you react to that.
yeah.
First. So I think like a lot of old Twitter scaled well. Like it wasn't good. It was people whiny, complaining, kind of like the woke stuff, which is kind of
Yeah.
but it was good to react to. Right?
Those people
So,
were like,
these are like good topics to like, because like Twitter is like an interaction website, right?
Yeah.
So like, you need like a base foundation of what are we going to react to? What are we talking about? And it's almost like this is like a good like foundation to like set the subjects up, and then we could run through top. And then like Elon Twitter is a little bit more like right-wing topics. And
yeah.
like,
It does dominate it a lot more.
and I think that's better when that's like a little bit more the minority than the foundation. I think when that's sort of the foundation, it just to me it scales a little worse than like it drags you down a little bit if you see all this too much like hardcore right wing content is not good over and over as the foundation of the website. It should be reacting to something. It's kind of like going to a party. You want people to be like polite. It may be fake, but you just want that to be like the layer. So I think that's one of the reasons it got kind of worse. But I think he's bribing a lot of people to stay on. Like he's giving a lot of creators pretty good money now in ad revenue. And I think it's just literally like, look, the site's worse, but we're just going to give you a lot of money to stay. And it's like, well, I'll be here.
That's the funny thing, dude. Like to be honest, like I probably mainly stay now because I get paid by Twitter. Like I get about $2,000 a month, Australian, and like for me that's like a lot because like I'm still a young guy. Like I'm still like uni,
rent or mortgage, right? So
yeah. It's almost my rent. So like that's probably the main thing that keeps me around, which is funny. I think it has gotten demonstrably worse and everything, which is kind of sad. It's weird because like the old Twitter, like those types of blue sky people, they're really annoying. They're really scolding. Like they try and censor people and stuff like that. But I don't know, like there's a certain level though of like, I don't know, like when you just see like genuine Hitler shit and everything like constantly on Twitter now, like it's kind of annoying. Like, I don't know, like I feel like it's gotten to a point where like, I don't even like in the old Twitter, like Jordan B. Peterson got like taken down just because he didn't call someone like a pronoun, which I think is stupid. Like that's just like censorship for like just the weakest reason possible. But now like you will literally have guys like, I don't know if you saw the thing the other day, like there was like a transgender, like 16-year-old or 17-year-old who killed themselves. And like, there was just like this massive feeding frenzy where like all these guys were like celebrating it and they were posting like Wojaks of like transgender people hanging themselves and stuff like that. And like, just like, it was like really vulgar, you know, like just a lot of people like just like literally taking a lot of glee in the death. And I just was like thinking to myself, like, I don't know, like, is this like really like, this is kind of more 4chan type shit to me. Like, I don't know. What do you sort of think? As somebody who's like, what's your sort of response when it comes to like, you know, that marketplace of ideas stuff? Like, do you think there should be some level of like content moderation at all, or like do you think it should be full free?
No, I don't believe in content moderation.
Yeah, so do you think it just be full free for all?
I actually think it's also changing the cultures of other countries, which other countries don't really have First Amendment freedom of speech.
True.
And if you grow up on Twitter or something, and you just say whatever you want, and there's no like consequences, you'll begin thinking like, well, why is the government restricting certain speech?
Oh, dude.
I also think it's like a form of American cultural imperialism.
Yeah. No, true. Look, I got a $30,000 fine in Australia, $30,000 because
a lot of money.
Yeah, I held a blank sign for the Chinese consulate in Brisbane, and it started off as like a $2,000 fine. I appealed it to like the lowest level of the court system. They gave me a $5,000 fine. Peeled it again, and then it's now $30,000, and it's just like fucking disaster. Like and like I've got no way of paying that. They know I have no way of paying that. I'm like 26 years old. I don't really make much money. Like, I don't even know what their plan is. Like, if they're going to just like keep harassing me for this debt until like I fucking die or something like that. I haven't even got a letter in the mail or anything, but it's like pretty fucking concerning. Like, and 30K for like fucking nothing. Like, I don't know. It is a bit of a two-tier legal system sometimes, I feel, because like they'll do this stuff to just like kind of like quiet white people, I feel. And then like then you'll have like some kind of crazy like Islamist protest where like in Sydney in Australia, like people held up signs that said behead all those who insult the prophet. And like no one got fined, no one got anything against them. And then I get like a 30K fine for like just holding a blank sign. Like it's kind of fucked up.
Right.
I don't know, like what do you think like when what's the limit though, like when it comes to like content moderation? Like because I guess it's free speech versus content moderation. Like I feel like if every website becomes 4chan, it's probably like it probably is bad for the culture or like or worsens the culture in a way. What do you think?
I think people create their own silos a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good point, but I think Twitter is working. You know, I think you can choose who to follow, and you can just go on the following tab.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
some
That's
people
true.
who do that, but yeah, for me, in the position I'm in, I want less moderation is
Yeah, I
going
get you.
against me. So I don't like.
I think
I
that's
don't.
right. Like both of us as like I guess like if you've got a bigger account and you're writing and stuff like that, it really only ever works against you rather than like, you know, improving anything for you. It's probably the case. I'm interested maybe as like one of our final topics, we could talk about Trump a bit. How would you explain like the appeal of like Trump to like a non-American? Like, what do you think is sort of like taps in the American psyche or like the American soul, like the appeal of Trump?
Yeah, I mean, he's really like America Manifest in many ways. So
Yeah,
what's the
yeah.
appeal of Trump? It's like he's almost symbolizes America anyway. So I mean, I understand the appeal quite,
Yeah.
quite. I mean, I can understand also like how people in like other countries like see him as like don't like him, but I understand because I grew up in America, like why Americans would like him. I mean, he's just sort of, I mean, every characteristic of him like kind of embodies like a certain, not all Americans, but a certain American ethos, and yeah, I completely understand.
I mean, that's true. What do you think are like the main ways he embodies like an American ethos? Like the kind of like
Yeah, like there's like he has really like a not an academic intelligence, but like a feral kind of competitive intelligence of like knowing
true.
weakness and strength, and like
I mean,
which
that's
is like
true.
that's kind of an American thing, which is like it's like a business kind of intelligence, which Americans really respect.
Yeah, that's true actually.
He's funny. He's sort of
Yeah.
I don't think he really has many ideals. I think he's just kind of he kind of does what he wants in many
Yeah,
ways.
yeah.
I think he actually has more ideals now than he used to. I think
Yeah,
there's like a
true,
certain
true.
project they're trying to do because of the rise of China. I think they're really trying to change things. But in his first term, it was just, I mean, I don't think he really, other than like certain tax cuts or certain things, and he wants to roll back a lot of the woke social acceleration, which I think a lot of Americans support as well. Yeah, he's not surprising to me.
I want to ask you, right? Because I think you are like a Trump supporter or a Trump voter. Is there anything that he's done
No,
since he got in that?
I'm not a Trump voter or anything.
Okay, right, right. Is there anything like since he got in that you really disagree with or dislike that he's done?
I don't know. I don't really have like political opinions like that. Like, we'll see what
Yeah, fair
happens.
enough.
I think he's trying to
Yeah, fair
change
enough.
America, and I'll be watching. But you know,
That actually makes me wonder, like, what is your sort of general approach to politics? It's just sort of like for you, it's kind of like a background thing. Like,
I mean, I watch it, I follow it, but I don't know. Like,
I guess you would see politics as sort of like downstream from culture.
yeah, some of it is as well. I also think, like in America, though, engaging with private, like politics is important for other countries because America can, real foreign policy is like
Yeah.
really important. And I think it's a state that everybody looks to leads. But when you're in America, you kind of have the game is engaging with the private sector. Because the private sector here is like determines your life.
Yeah.
I think there's not a lot of government support if that doesn't happen. So you kind of have to play the private sector game. I have my beliefs. I don't really like to share them or anything, but I don't think it's interesting. A lot of politics to me isn't that interesting. We'll see what happens.
What do you think America is going to win the competition with China? Like, this is a huge question, but I don't know, like,
China's coming. I mean, God, you look at every graph, and it's just China's just all the way up, and everything, and like construction and energy, and building and weapons, and so I mean, I think we're entering a world with two superpowers, and depending on how bad the American budget gets, America could be financial problems in the next few decades. But I think it's pretty inevitable that China is going to become the second big power.
I wonder if Chinese culture can ever scale up like across the world with the type of influence that American culture has had over the past century. Do you think that's possible?
No, but I don't think that's what China really is. I think China's something else.
It's very self-contained. Like it's like the Middle Kingdom.
But also they haven't really flexed yet anything.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
They haven't really like utilized military power overtly since becoming, I would say, basically a superpower 10 years ago. So
are you worried for the future of America? Like, do you fear for like the prospect of like a civil war or anything like that? And like not obviously not like, armies in the field type civil war, but like, like full breakdown in the social fabric and stuff like that?
No, not really. I think America's very wealthy. I think a lot of that is noise. I think, but it's a thin culture, and I think thin cultures harbor economic problems worse than thick cultures. So, like a place like Spain, which is like 30% unemployment for youth, or Greece during their recession when they had like 30 to 40% unemployment, I think would be very hard for America to handle. So
that would be fucking scary.
Anything can happen. So I think a deep depression would be interesting to see, because I don't know what would happen. It takes a lot of money to keep a thin culture society going. But it also it's a feedback loop. So it takes money to keep it going. So we're all focused on work. We're all focused on making money, and that's sort of the highest good is in the society is to make money. So it feeds itself, and it's. I think that's
why Britain's fucked right now, because like they had it seems like they kind of had a project over like 50, 60 years where like they wanted to transform their society from like a thick culture to a thin culture with much more influence of mass migration and things like that. Much less sort of like much less centered on like an ethnos. And I think that requires a lot of money, as you say, to keep social cohesion and social stability. And then like over the past 20 years, they've had like zero economic growth. And so like, then it becomes kind of scary. I feel like then you can sometimes just have like really bad sectarianism and just like full conflict in the streets and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But thanks, Drew. I think we should wrap up.
Yeah, no, thank you, Lindy Man. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna post this as a podcast as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk around again sometime. I'd love to do it with Pericles one time. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Drew.
Absolutely.
Take it easy.
Thanks, man. Have a good one. Thank you, bro. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. It's been a productive episode of the Drew Pavlis Show. I'm going to upload this as well as a podcast. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It's just a shorter one today. But yeah, I'll see if I can maybe stream again tonight. Let me know how everyone's going. And yeah, thanks so much, guys. Salute. God bless you all. And stay humble. remember the fortress of righteousness is rising. Thank you, guys.